The moving truck hadn't even left the curb when Armin froze mid-step, a half-open box slipping from his grip and scattering books across the pavement. Time didn't slow down. It snapped, sharp and merciless, because standing just a few feet away, brushing dust off her hands in the bright warmth of the late morning sun, was a face he had buried 10 years deep in memory, a face that had once been the center of his world, and the reason it had shattered. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world continued around them. Cars passed, a dog barked somewhere, a child laughed in the distance. But for Armin, everything blurred into silence. Because the woman he had spent years trying to forget, the girl who had unknowingly broken him in college, was now his new neighbor. And she hadn't recognized him yet. Before we go further, take a second. If you believe in kindness, fate, and second chances, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Heartfelt Stories. You never know which story might remind you that life still has surprises waiting. Armin bent down quickly, collecting his books with trembling hands, trying to steady his breathing. His son, Ishan, tugged at his sleeve, asking something about where his toy car had gone, but Armin barely heard him. His eyes drifted back, almost involuntarily, and this time, she looked up. Recognition didn't hit her all at once. It crept in slowly. Confusion first, then curiosity, and finally something deeper. Her brows furrowed, her lips parted slightly, and then his name escaped her, soft but certain. The sound of it sent a quiet storm through his chest. 10 years ago, Armin had been a different man. Lighter, hopeful, reckless in a way young love makes you believe nothing can go wrong. Back then, she had been everything. They weren't officially together, but anyone could see it in the way they gravitated toward each other. The way conversations stretched late into the night, the way silence between them never felt empty. But life had intervened, as it often does, without warning or fairness. She had left. No explanation, no goodbye worth remembering, just absence. And Armin had carried that silence with him into adulthood. Now, standing there in the bright, unforgiving clarity of daylight, she looked older, yes, but not in a way that dimmed her. There was a calmness about her, a quiet strength, the kind that comes from surviving something. He straightened up, forcing a polite nod, unsure what version of himself she remembered, or if he even wanted to know. Days passed, but the air between their homes carried something unspoken. Armin focused on routine. Mornings were for getting Ishan ready, making breakfast, packing school bags. Afternoons were work, long hours, often from home, balancing deadlines and parenting. Evenings were quieter, filled with small moments, helping with homework, listening to childish stories that somehow made everything feel lighter. But now, every time he stepped outside, there was a possibility. And possibility, he had learned, was dangerous. She appeared in fragments at first, watering plants, checking the mail, standing by her window with a cup of coffee. They exchanged polite smiles, the kind strangers share. Nothing more. But beneath that politeness was tension, like a thread stretched too tight. Then one afternoon, everything shifted. Ishan had been playing outside, chasing a ball that had rolled too far into the street. Armin's heart nearly stopped when a car turned the corner faster than expected. He shouted, dropping everything running, but he wasn't fast enough. She reached Ishan just in time, pulling him back with a force fueled by instinct. The car sped past, unaware of what almost happened. Silence followed, heavy and trembling. Armin reached him seconds later, breathless, his heart pounding violently. He dropped to his knees, pulling Ishan into his arms, checking him over, his hands shaking uncontrollably. When he finally looked up, she was still there, her expression pale but steady. That was the moment the distance between them cracked. Gratitude forced its way through everything else. He thanked her, his voice uneven, and for the first time, they spoke more than a few words. It wasn't smooth or easy. It was awkward, hesitant, filled with pauses that carried years of unsaid things. But it was something. From that day on, small conversations began to grow. They talked about simple things at first, the neighborhood, the weather, daily routines. Then gradually, they touched on deeper things. She learned about Ishan, about how Armin had lost his wife years ago to an illness that had taken everything too quickly. He spoke of sleepless nights, of learning to be both mother and father, of the quiet loneliness that followed him even in crowded rooms. She listened, not with pity, but with understanding, and slowly, he began to see pieces of her story too. She had left college abruptly because of a family crisis, something she hadn't been able to explain back then. Life had pulled her in directions she hadn't chosen, and by the time she could look back, too much time had passed. She admitted she had tried to find him once, but circumstances and fear had stopped her. Regret hung between them, fragile and heavy. Armin didn't forgive her right away. Pain doesn't work like that. It doesn't dissolve just because someone explains it, but something in him softened. Maybe it was the way she cared for Ishan without trying too hard. Maybe it was the way she didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. Or maybe it was simply time, finally doing what time is supposed to do. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, they found themselves sitting on the steps between their houses. Ishan played nearby, his laughter drifting in the warm air. For the first time, silence between them felt familiar again. Not empty, not tense, just still. Armin realized something then. Life hadn't brought her back to reopen old wounds. It had brought her back when he was no longer the same person who had been hurt. He had changed. He had endured. And maybe, just maybe, he was strong enough now to see her not as a memory, but as a person standing right in front of him. And she wasn't the same girl either. She had grown, broken in places, perhaps, but rebuilt in ways that made her stronger. Their connection didn't rush. It didn't try to recreate what once was. Instead, it built something new, something quieter, steadier, rooted in understanding rather than expectation. But healing isn't a straight line. There were days when Armin pulled away, when old doubts whispered too loudly. Days when he questioned whether reopening his heart was worth the risk. Days when fear told him that losing again would break him in ways he couldn't recover from. And yet, every time he saw Ishan laugh with her, every time he noticed how she respected his boundaries, every time she stayed, even when things were complicated, something inside him began to trust again. Trust, he realized, wasn't built on perfect timing or flawless choices. It was built on showing up, again and again. One morning, as sunlight poured through the kitchen window, Armin watched Ishan draw something at the table. Curious, he walked over and looked down. It was a picture of three people. Him, Ishan, and her. His chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with something softer. Hope. If this story is touching your heart so far, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Stories like this remind us that even after loss, even after heartbreak, life still finds ways to bring light back in. Time moved forward, gently but surely. What started as cautious friendship began to deepen into something more meaningful. Not rushed, not forced, just real. And one evening, under skies slowly turning from blue to twilight, Armin made a choice. Not a grand gesture, not a dramatic confession, just a quiet decision to stop running from what he felt. Because sometimes love doesn't come back the way you expect it to. Sometimes it returns softer, wiser, patient, and sometimes it waits for you to become the person who can finally receive it. As he stood there, watching her laugh at Ishan in the fading light, Armin realized that second chances aren't about fixing the past. They're about building a future you once thought was lost. Before we reach the end, here's something special. Tell us in the comments. Do you believe people deserve second chances in love, even after years apart? Because stories like this aren't just about one man or one woman. They're about all of us. And the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, life still has something beautiful waiting around the corner. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something real, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories. Your support helps keep these stories alive. And who knows, the next one might feel like it was written just for you.